In my last video called Woden's Arsenal, Arming European Social Democracy to the Teeth, I dealt with several issues such as migration and the military weakness of Europe. But one subject that I didn't cover was the benevolentness of Europe. How Europe, an intelligent, technologically advanced Europe, must be benevolent to the world in which it interacts. I've often used the word dominance, but let me just explain what I mean by dominance. I mean simply the dominance of European cultural values such as the rule of law, liberty, the good rules that make up our society and make it function. There have been many advanced societies which have had technological advantages, such as China and Rome, which had good rules at the start, but then used rules to contain themselves and to contain the spread of information. This led to isolationism and the contraction of their GDP per capita, and in the Roman case, the eventual destruction of the Roman Empire, and also the in China's case, to colonization. Now, my ideas such as a Boer independent republic and a independent Jewish state in the Horn of Africa are not colonialism. Although they have the European social democratic model at their heart and have the rules of European culture, these countries would not be part of the European Union. And I also mentioned in many ways that we need to increase rail and air links along East Africa between those places so that there is a multiplier effect as more capital investment comes into the Horn of Africa and also into an independent Boer republic, which would help the surrounding regions to develop into regional governance, which would be linked together with a European Union. What we can see in the Arab Spring countries is exactly that. But there are technological questions to be solved here, because you cannot expect people to get on high-speed rail and travel many days between a Boer republic and a Jewish state in the Horn of Africa without intermediate destinations and along the way, or even by air. It would still be a long travel time. But what we can do is perhaps look at Paul Romer's idea of chartered cities. Chartered cities would be based on rules which would be based on rational plans, such as a constitution, such as Niall Ferguson spoke about under John Locke, who spoke about the getting people who, let's face it, in Africa the human capital to work with is not very high. Many people have no education at all and are living in Neolithic or Iron Age conditions, or Industrial Revolution era conditions. This is a lot of this is down to bad rules that were taken up by different African countries, and as Paul Romer said, countries are too big to completely change overnight. Although I believe in the nation state and Europe as an entity that has become like an empire but needs to convert itself into a nation state on a large continental scale, cities are the way to go to change things, not just in Africa but in Europe itself, by having good rational plans as a starting point, which could be developed by university professors, but then using without the need for such a thing as a God complex. What is a God complex? Where people believe they're absolutely right and they get very upset when they're challenged. I do not have all the solutions, but I'm simply putting out a rational plan to and then through trial and error, the cities can develop, and we can see what works, and perhaps use not only just European or American firms and investment firms and everything, and populations as well. If you want to expand your city, you may need a core population of people who are from migrant stock, or European stock, that would be Nordic, Roman, and Celtic people, to form the seed germ of the city itself. But I would like these cities to be actually manufactured like IKEA manufactures furniture, or in any other product. But it's not just technologies and hard uh, construction that we need to develop, but the rules as well. And when you get these together as a synthesis, these ideas would work very well. Now, John Locke's Constitution for the United States, 13 colonies before they declared independence, of course, was that people would work for their keep and thus be given land for free, in up to an acre, or maybe even more than that, to develop a rural economy. And this is my idea, or taking a bet from John Locke, to develop a rural economy around these chartered cities, which would thus mean that people could migrate without such a sudden shock from Neolithic life to, or in industrialization life, to a city where they would have no educational skills, or maybe could not get a job. That these chartered cities would be linked along the African coast, and in Europe itself, and in North Africa, in the various different unions, to have stopping points along the high-speed rail links and air links. This has happened before, where different countries have cooperated in a partnership, such as Hong Kong, where the British did impose a treaty on the Chinese, but they gradually worked together to get their different competitive advantages in the terms of Chinese as labour, while the British had the technology but not the population to colonise Hong Kong with Europeans, as they did in the United States. What we would eventually do is these cities would form the core of new countries, perhaps, as the rules spread throughout the continent of Europe and Africa, continents of Europe and Africa, and the wider world. We would thus have chartered cities that may have many different countries developing them, and those different dynamic ways that countries develop their rules together in the various different circumstances in each different country, with each different country's problems and advantages, would thus allow cities to grow organically out of a central core of a pre-made city that would be developed in Europe, built in Europe, in terms of the actual stock of housing and everything else, and then moved to the area. What this would sound expensive, but it would cause a multiplier effect in Europe, with construction and investment and banking and the different firms that would move to these chartered cities, and increase Europe's economic power as well as its military power. Now, cities are not just a capital good in that they have machines in them that make other machines, but they are a social good as well. And considering that there may be increased population in the future, in Bill Ford's, that's the grandson of Henry Ford, said there could be 9 billion people in the future, but yet we can decrease our footprint, in Paul Romer's view, by putting more and more people in cities, since only 3% of the arable land of the world is cities.